working together to provide for the community. And I think that's, the silver lining, if you will, to this new pool. It's a great thing when two government entities can work together for the betterment of the area, and that's exactly what we're doing. And I'm personally proud to be a part of it, and I'm happy to see it happening. I really am. I want to thank everybody that's involved, and from my side, I just wanted to see an agreement where both parties are all in. The changes that I personally wanted was to take out some language that afforded the option for either party to back out, if you will, with a simple 90-day notice. And I don't feel that's the correct way to start a partnership. I think we both need to be all in, and I think it's going to be something that the community is proud of. And with that said, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the changes as.
We do that, discussion on you.
So I move to adopt the changes. I move to adopt the changes as provided by Marty Nichols.
We got a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We got a second to the motion now, we have discussion. Jim, you any discussion? Tom?
No, I have no.
Down in the city council, you got it? Alino?
I'd like, my concerns. Mayor, you want to give it to my chair? I have my conversation.
Okay, first of all, I want to say that we all want a pool. There's no question we're going to get a pool. I don't like the way we're going after the pool. First of all, I was notified about this meeting about 20 minutes ago, in the middle of a shower. That's why I'm reading from my own notes to make sure that I get my... Sean, how are you?
Hey Leo, how you doing?
Yeah, that's my friend. Okay, anyway, the things that are concerning people that I've heard, a simple vote. I don't know how many have been in the military, but there's a reason why people go in the military, so that each one of you, whoever you are, whatever your financial stability is, whatever you, I always said this, and when I was in the sheriff's office, when I heard deputies complain about other people, I said, would you complain when a little woman, a bag lady, if you will, in front pushing a cart, and a little boy holding her hand, and my quote is this: if that little kid loves that lady, why can't you? And I wanted to draw a writing to that. But anyway, a simple vote is, I want everybody to have a right to vote. That's why we fight wars. We go to war so that we have a freedom and a right in this community and in every little town, that everybody, regardless of their statute, has a say. That's why we have a simple vote. I'm not worried whether it's going to pass or not. That's up to the people. That's why we get elected. The other thing that I was concerned about, I really appreciate the college's concern. I think that's what you need to really make something happen, is you have a college, and I think they have a financial system that is really great. We need a pool, there's no question. I don't like a joint power. This should have been about 3 pages. You vote for these folks, you vote for these folks. If we don't do what you want, you can recall, you can not vote us into office. That's your prerogative. But we should be able to control a simple thing like a swimming pool. We don't need people coming in and going after eminent domain and attacking your property tax, and we, as your elected officials, don't have a say. If we decide to pull out, we're still obligated for the $2 million, $3 million. And the reason I wanted to say why I didn't vote was the fact that we have $2 million, $500,000 that we stuck into a general fund because we couldn't pay for it. All we were paying was the taxes on it. That's for the golf course, which is an enterprise fund, and the airport. That's people's interest. I like the airport. So I should pay for it. You shouldn't pay for it. But we had to put $500,000 in the general fund because we couldn't pay for that. And now we're gonna come out here and say, we're gonna spend $3 million of your money without you having a say? That's all I say. You tell me you want a pool. You tell me that, Lino, I want you to get out there and fight for it. I will fight as hard for the pool as I did for natural gas. And for the other thing is the driving school that you have in Susanville. You did not have a driving school in Susanville. You're looking at the person that went to court and got you that. I fought cities for that while I worked for the college. That's what you have to do. People have to pull together if you want something. And that's what I'm saying. It's not that we don't want to pull. I'll vote yes right now. But give the power to where you have the right to take us out if you want to.
Anybody else from City Council? Wish to come up? We do have a motion on the floor, and that's for debate.
That's just a motion for
Well, or if you want to go out and debate, but they want any, right now we're debating that and brief, take an input on it, see why that's happening. Can we get the mic down here to the end?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think first of all, we have to recognize that the City Council has already taken action to adopt a joint powers agreement. So really, at this point in time, the Board of Supervisors has to act in order to move this discussion along. And we have two choices. We could either adopt the joint powers agreement the City Council adopted the other night, or we could adopt an amended version of that document. And if we do, then it will require the city to concur to those amendments in order to have a document that is joint. So I think the public needs to understand that's the process that we're working on. And I don't know if that has come through or not. So at this point, I was in favor of the City Council adopting the joint powers agreement that they had before them, and I was comfortable with the Board of Supervisors to adopt the same joint powers agreement even now. Obviously, this gives us an opportunity, and I think having a joint session, it gives us the opportunity to work together to try to come up with something that's maybe even better. I think time has run out. Personally, I've been wanting a simpler document. I think the document is far too complex, and it's complex, I think, in part to generate conflict and controversy. And what I've really been amazed over the last few weeks as we've been debating the joint powers issue. The Board of Supervisors placed the money in their budget. The city is talking about putting the money in their budget. So the money side of it hasn't been the focus of the discussion. It's been the JPA. Is that we've spent a far greater amount of energy trying to come up with mechanisms to blow this thing up rather than to make this thing work. So I would encourage both this board and the council as we hopefully bring this to a resolution is let's come up with something that is designed to work rather than something designed to be blown up. And I think that needs to be said. If we are willing to do that, then I'm willing to support it. I think the suggestions in terms of the amendments that Mr. Nichols has provided the board based on the discussion we had last week are livable. In some respects, I think they're somewhat unnecessary, but they're not catastrophic in terms of keeping us from being able to make something happen. So I'm willing to support the amendment, and therefore I would support the motion that's on the floor. The one thing I would encourage is maybe to step back for a moment, and I want to thank Mr. Caligari for zeroing in on this, because as I was reading it, I was focusing on all the other angles, and I wasn't really giving much thought. But going to paragraph 5.3 on page 2, one thing I think we should strike from the JPA, and I would hope that if the board's motion passes and it goes back to the city for its action to concur, that we strike the phrase, use the power of eminent domain from the document. Not to say that eminent domain may not have a role to play, that's anticipating, and I realize that Mr. Nichols took this from a boilerplate documents that have been used by JPAs around the state, and maybe in other instances, that's an important, vital aspect. In our particular case, I think the sites that would be available for the JPA to consider for a pool, in particular the county property adjacent to The old pool, which is, in my opinion, the primary property now, but it's not the only property to be considered, would not require any sort of eminent domain. More importantly, I think eminent domain is a power that should be left with the elected officials in their respective settings. So if the JPA was to run into a situation where it felt that that would be the only option available, then it would be incumbent upon them, the JPA that is, to go to either the city council or the board to get them to exercise that option. So therefore, it's not really necessary to be in here. And I think it opens up a whole host of other conflicts that, in my opinion, probably designed to sabotage us even having the JPA. So I'd say get rid of that sentence out of that particular paragraph would make me feel a lot better. And in retrospect, had I tuned into that one earlier, I would have been hoping that the council would have struck it, and I would be advocating that the board would strike it. So maybe it's a good thing we didn't act last week. You know, the JPA, in terms of how I envision it to be seen, and I think it's important that we understand that the setting that we're in. We ask, why is the city not doing this, or why is the county involved? The reality is, over the last 40 years, the growth in our area has been significant in the sense that probably 60 to 70% of the population of Lassen County lies in the Honey Lake Valley, primarily in the upper end of the Honey Lake Valley. The boundaries of the city have only grown so much in the last 40 years. And most of the residential development after the city has filled out its boundaries has taken place in the unincorporated areas. You know, 40 years ago, the counties were not involved in providing a lot of programs like this kind of a program. That would not be a normal thing for the county to be involved in. We focus on roads, we focus on law enforcement, and we focus on health and social services delivery. But in terms of providing these kind of services, we don't. Typically, these are services that you would see at a municipal level, which has obviously been a role the city has played in the past. But when we talk about having votes, okay, the vote that took place in 2004 took place within the city of Susanville. It did not include anybody in an unincorporated area, but half the people that utilized Roosevelt Pool then, and half the people who would utilize the new pool, live in the unincorporated areas. So you've already disenfranchised half the people making the decision as to the future. So given the fact that the city and the county have that unique situation where half the people lie in the county and half lie in the city that would utilize this pool in a primary sense, it doesn't mean that anybody can't use the pool, because throughout the rest of the county, and for that matter, the rest of the state and nation, if they came here, could use the pool. But the folks who primarily are going to use it, which represent 60 to 70% of the population of the county directly, you know, half of it lies in the county. So I think the county has an obligation to have this partnership with the city. And to expect the city to do it alone, or to expect the county to do it alone, I don't think is fair to the overall question. That's the reason why I was responsive to and receptive to the initiative when Mr. Wilson, the council member, came to me one day and said, how about, you know, we put something together that can be a partnership. And I think it can be a historic partnership to demonstrate to the voters and to the public the ability for the city and the county to achieve great things by working together. And that's the reason why I signed on to support this. As far as the functioning of this pool JPA, I'm not in favor of going to the voters and asking for more money. And that's where the vote requires a 2/3. I believe, and have strongly believed for a long time, that the county's had ample financial resources that would be available to it. I believe the city also has the opportunity to use some of its resources. Now, it's easy to say that, because I'm sure there would be a room full of people just like this room here to come in and say, well, we want that money to use for this, and we want that money to use for that. And believe me, we don't have enough money to do everything for everybody all the time at the maximum amount level. So we have to choose and we have to prioritize. And that's really the role of the City Council and the Board of Supervisors, is to prioritize those demands and needs and wants with the available resources that we have. And that's exactly what we're doing here. And what I'm saying is that the need for the swimming facility is important because it's just as important as all the other priorities that we've given in terms of law enforcement and healthcare and roads and whatever it may be on the table that we take care of. And it needs to be dealt back into the game. It's been cut out now for 10 years, and it's easy to say, well, let somebody else do it. Another argument that's used oftentimes is if it's that important, let the private sector do it. Well, next year the county is going to be 150 years old, and the private sector has had 150 years to step to the plate and provide this as a service. The fact that we don't have a swimming pool is clearly an indication that the private sector does not see the value in it or the opportunity to make any money from it. And so as a result, it's not going to happen. So if you're of the frame of mind that the private sector should do it, then be my guest. You know, if you've never run a business, here's your chance to find out. Go ahead and start up and provide a pool, and you can do good for the community. So in the vacuum that's created by the lack of the private sector from being able to provide this kind of a service is where I think the public agencies are called upon to fill. And I think you'll find throughout most of the rural parts of the country, maybe not so much in the urban areas where you maybe do have a lot more concentration of private wealth, and the private sector maybe provides, you know, gyms and YMCAs and the like, is you'll find that there's a pool that exists is because the people have gotten together and have worked through their public agencies to provide the vast majority of those facilities. So this is consistent with that, in my opinion. By utilizing existing revenues that we have available to us and through the private contributions that the public has, like we've had with the pennies for the pool, started with the school kids a few years ago, and a lot of people have gotten involved. We've got over $27,000 now has been accumulated in the Treasury. We've got commitments or pledges from probably a dozen other folks that could easily take that amount up to over 100 or 200,000 that could be contributed to it. I think that using existing revenues, I still feel that we need to have the public demonstrated support. And this is where I see as a safety valve, instead of all this language we're putting into the JPA to kind of guarantee that nobody backs out, is that once the JPA forms this program and comes up with how it strategizes to put it together and how it's going to, what it's going to cost us and where it's going to be located and how it's going to be operated and what the base budgets are going to be in terms of being able to perform. At that point in time, not because we have to, I think it's because we want to, is that we would submit that to a future vote of all the voters in the county, and I'm convinced that it would be overwhelming because we're not asking for a new tax. We don't need 66% of the vote. 50% plus one can do it. And in 2008, in the vote that took place then, we had just shy of 54% of the vote with a tax that the voters voted on a wide basis to support a pool. So I think that there is sufficient public support for it, and it would be even stronger if we're not relying upon imposing a new tax as a basis for providing it. So using our existing resources, but we're limited as a board, and where you're limited as a council is the board today can't be appropriating money 10 years from now or 12 years from now out down the road. And in order to assure that the funding stream that we've identified at the county level, in this case I'm talking about the settlement, the tobacco settlement funds, you know, we can commit the fund this year and we can commit the fund next year because we're on the board, but I'm not going to necessarily be here to commit the fund 12 years out. That if we are to take that as the funding scheme and put it as part of the ballot measure in terms of having the voters vote on it, is that whatever we do legislatively, the people can do legislatively as well, but even better. So if anybody could commit those funds in the future in terms of guaranteeing that we have the funds during this 15-year period of time, it's those people. And I think that's where, as far as the JPA would be strengthened, you slap them on the back and say, okay, it's got the blessing of the people, so if a future council gets elected on a platform of shutting down the pool, they're going to have to take on the voters to be able to undo the appropriation. So the way you guarantee those monies, you know, is not necessarily through the wording that's in this document, but through the fact that you get the voters to say, you guys did a good job, you put it together the right way, you're doing it in a very cost-efficient fashion, and we are going to make sure that money is available for the next 15 years. And I think if we were able to do that with this JPA at some future point when we have the definitive document, don't put it on saying, we vote for it, and then we'll tell you how it'll be later on. Let's get it up and running and showing how it works and demonstrating that it will happen. And then say, is it the will of the people to back the financing on this over the next 15 years? And I guarantee you the answer will be yes. Now, obviously, the JPA would have to look at the old pool, and it's been suggested that we resurrect it and put it back into use. And that's an option that the JPA would have, and I don't think that's one that should be discounted. Do I expect that to be a primary direction to go? Given what I've learned and have known about the pool in the last 10 years, it's going to be very difficult and very expensive to do. And if we have good dollars, and we could do it better by building a new one, then I think obviously that would probably be the preferred course. But we should leave that to the JPA to work it out rather than predetermine that for them by saying it has to be that versus this. And that's the beauty of this document, is it would empower these 5 individuals, give them the task to bring in a project that will have the respect of the council, have the respect of the board, but more importantly, will have the respect of the people. And with that, we have to get to the start line, we have to get going. And so I'm in favor of us adopting this JPA in the modified form, and I'd encourage my colleagues and friends on the council to do the same. Yeah, the one amendment I would suggest to the maker of the motion is to strike out on page 2 out of section 5.3 the use of the words, use the power of eminent domain, and delete that as a power being delegated to this JPA.
The maker of the motion would like to agree with the suggestion to remove the eminent domain clause.
Second. Okay. Another one maybe is on 9.2 on financing D, instead of the authority, the auditor. You guys, that's one of the concerns. You guys want to change authority to auditor, we can have an issue with that. It is on the new one.
That's before he.
Okay.
Larry suggested that last week. Do we even want to have COD in there? Because the new language in E supersedes, I think.
Everybody in the board of supervisors okay then, and we're today?
Mr. Chairman?
One shot.
Just for clarification, I just want to bring to everyone's attention that item, what is it, 9.2CB, will need some cleanup because the auditor doesn't have the authority to withhold property tax allocation without each individual board appropriating.
Could you identify yourself to the?
Karen Couch, County Auditor.
Okay.
So, just for future reference.
You make a motion, just do that.
Go ahead, do it.
Well, Larry's up there.
You don't have the motion. Okay, make the motion.
The motion is to include the striking of the eminent domain wording
And add the language in the second.
and add the language in the staff report. The one, yes.
There was 3 changes. 3.1, 9.2, and 9.13.
Yeah. Changes from draft 1 would be in Marty, staff report. Any more discussion or debate in the board of supervisors before we vote? Richard Egan?
Thank you, Richard Egan, Treasurer Tax Collector. I hesitate to make what amounts to a technical suggestion at this point. Very happy to see it moving forward, but I do have one suggestion that you may wish to incorporate as we're going forward. It pertains to section 9.3, the duties of the treasurer controller. That section A through G appears to me to be a little bit inconsistent with the government code when I look at it. Without getting into a great level of detail, it suggests that the JPA board would appoint a treasurer who would act as treasurer and auditor controller. I don't think that's consistent with the government code. My suggestion to simplify it would simply be to delete A through G and replace it with language that says the board shall appoint a treasurer consistent with section 6505 of the government code, leaving the details up to the JPA.
Are there any objections to this change? Okay, Larry, make a motion.
I'd like, can you just explain a little bit, Marty, about
Just what,
What Mr. Egan is suggesting is that we delete the language that in 9.3 and just substitute it with the statutory language in the California Government Code 6505, which I think would be the objective. That way we can just operate pursuant to the state law and not this agreement. That sort of meets Jim's objective of simplifying a little bit. So the suggested amendment would be that 9.3 just reads, there's just one section, the board shall appoint a treasurer pursuant to the California State Government Code Section 6505.
is this change something that could easily be done later once we have the JPA?
It is a change that JPA could make at some point in the future also, yes.
I just, look, I would personally, I want to make as little changes as possible to this. The main deal is that we're all in, city and county. That is what I'm concerned with. I'm sure there's going to be numerous little, things, not that this is little, but I think this is going to be, tweaked and improved as we go. So I would prefer to leave it as is and just make sure that we're both all in, as which your changes in the motion for every state.
Article 12 talks about and gives the bill to make amendments.
And we come back at a later stage to refine it. But I do want to thank Richard. With that said, I do want to thank Richard for bringing that point up, and it will be obviously addressed as we go forward.
Okay, Supervisor Obama.
Mr. Chair, I think
wait a minute, Mr. Allward would speak, and then we will vote on what we think is good, then we'll get throw it over to you guys.
Let me talk before we go.
We will, Mr. Allward.
well, first off, I would like to sincerely thank everybody for showing up today and voicing your concern. I really appreciate that. Second off, I know emotions are high right now, and the way I look at it is we need to be practical about it. It's like going and buying a car or buying a house. Everybody wants a Ferrari and Lamborghini, but we can only afford the Ford Focus. So we need to be careful about doing that. I agree with a couple of other people. I think this should go before the voters. I don't think that it's my choice, or I should be the one making a $200,000 a year commitment for all of the Lassen County taxpayers. I don't think that's my place in doing this, and I think it should go before the voters. If there was such a need, I think private industry would have come in. They would have come in and built their own pool, or they would have come in and rebuilt the Roosevelt pool. I mean, there's certain hotels that have a swimming pool in their backyard, and there's some of them that don't. And that's their choice. We use monies one-time monies this year to balance our budget at the county. Who's gonna say that that's gonna be there 13, 14, 15 years from now? And the other little concern I have, and I've said it once before, back when we were doing our budget, is the community of Big Valley up there, they put in a pool. They used some grant dollars, they got it in, and they really struggle to make ends meet to this day. They really struggle. And